You ever notice that moment when someone asks you a simple question and your mouth opens, then closes again? Not because you don't have an answer, but because you suddenly think, why am I about to justify this? Maybe it's when you say no to a plan, or when you leave a conversation early, or when you choose something that doesn't make sense to other people, a quiet weekend, a different career path, a slower life. And instead of launching into a 5-sentence explanation, something in you pauses. You just stop. You don't explain, you don't defend, you don't soften it with disclaimers or jokes, and the room feels different, a little quieter, a little tenser, a little powerful. If you've ever done this or watched someone do it, you know how strangely charged that moment feels. It can feel awkward or freeing or almost rebellious in a way that's hard to describe, like you just broke an invisible social rule without raising your voice. So what actually happens psychologically when you stop explaining yourself? What changes inside you? What changes in other people? And why does such a small behavior shift feel so big? That's what we're unpacking today. And by the end, you might recognize parts of yourself you've never quite named before. Then there's the first type, the person who has spent most of their life over-explaining. Picture this. Someone asks you a harmless question. Why are you leaving so early? And before they finished the sentence, you're already assembling a verbal essay in your head. You talk about tomorrow morning, your energy levels, traffic, work, how you'd love to stay but you really can't. Not because they demanded an explanation, but because you felt the pressure to earn your choice. Psychologically, over-explaining is often a learned survival skill. It develops in environments where your preferences weren't automatically respected, where saying no came with consequences, guilt, or interrogation. So your nervous system learned, if I explain well enough, maybe I'll stay safe. Maybe I won't disappoint anyone. When someone like this stops explaining themselves, it can feel terrifying at first. The silence feels exposed, naked, like you forgot to wear emotional armor. But something interesting happens beneath the anxiety. Your brain begins to uncouple choice from approval. Instead of scanning the room for validation, your attention turns inward. Do I actually need permission for this? And for the first time, the answer might be no. If this resonates, you might notice a strange withdrawal period when you stop explaining. You feel rude, cold, unreasonable, even though you haven't said anything harsh at all. That discomfort isn't proof you're doing something wrong. It's your nervous system adjusting to a new rule. You don't have to narrate your autonomy. Then there's another profile, the quiet calibrator. This is the person who doesn't stop explaining out of fear or exhaustion, but out of awareness. They've noticed something subtle over time. The more they explain, the more people feel entitled to negotiate their decisions. They say, I can't come tonight because I'm tired. And suddenly it's, but you can rest here, or you'll feel better once you're out, or just stay for an hour. So they experiment. Next time, they simply say, I won't make it tonight. No justification, no opening, no debate. What's happening psychologically here is boundary clarity. When explanations disappear, ambiguity disappears with them. Explanations invite interpretation. Statements close the loop. This type often notices a shift in social dynamics almost immediately. Some people push back harder, those who benefited from your flexibility. Others adapt quickly, even respect you more, though they might not say it out loud. And here's the twist. The calibrator isn't being distant, they're being precise. They understand that emotional energy is a finite resource. Every explanation costs something, and not every situation deserves that cost. If you recognize yourself here, you might feel a quiet satisfaction when you stop explaining. Not because you enjoy tension, but because you feel aligned, like your outer behavior finally matches your inner certainty. Another profile emerges more slowly, the emotionally tired observer. This is the person who didn't plan to stop explaining. They just ran out of energy to keep doing it. They've spent years being the reasonable one, the understanding one, the one who smooths everything over. And at some point, something inside them goes quiet. Not angry, not dramatic, just done. When this person stops explaining themselves, it can look like withdrawal. Fewer words, shorter answers, less emotional padding. People around them may say, you've changed. Psychologically, this often marks the end of emotional overextension. The mind is conserving resources. It's prioritizing internal stability over external harmony. What's fascinating is that this type often discovers something unexpected. The world doesn't collapse. The relationships that relied entirely on their emotional labor may weaken, but others remain, even deepen, because they were never about explanation in the first place. If this lands for you, you might feel both relief and grief. Relief that you no longer have to perform clarity for everyone. Grief for the version of you that thought being understood was a requirement for being allowed to exist as you are. Then Then there's a more misunderstood type, the self-contained thinker. This person doesn't stop explaining to control others or protect themselves. They stop because they realize something subtle. Not everything meaningful translates cleanly into words. They might make decisions based on intuition, long reflection, or values they've integrated so deeply they no longer feel the need to articulate them. When asked why, they pause, not defensively, thoughtfully.
And sometimes they choose silence. Psychologically, this reflects internal coherence. Their sense of self doesn't depend on external confirmation. Explaining feels unnecessary, even distorting, like trying to summarize a complex novel in one sentence. This can confuse people who rely heavily on verbal processing. Silence gets interpreted as arrogance, secrecy, or emotional distance. But internally, the self-contained thinker feels calm, centered, complete. If this sounds familiar, you might notice that when you stop explaining, you feel more present in your body, less rushed, less scattered. You're not withholding, you're simply not translating everything for public consumption. But here's where things get really interesting. When you stop explaining yourself, you don't just change how you feel, you change how others relate to you. Some people lean in, they listen more carefully. Your words carry more weight because there are fewer of them. Some people get uncomfortable. Silence removes their ability to steer you. They fill the space with assumptions. And some people lose interest altogether, which can be painful but revealing. Psychologically, explanation acts like social glue. It reassures, softens, connects. Removing it exposes the true structure of relationships. Who respects you without access? Who only engages when they can influence? This is why stopping explanation can feel like a quiet rebellion. You're not rejecting connection, you're redefining it. You're saying, without saying it, I trust myself enough to let this stand. And that trust is contagious, or threatening, or both. There's also a deeper internal shift that happens over time. When you no longer narrate your choices, your mind stops rehearsing defenses. Mental noise decreases. You become less reactive, more deliberate. You act from intention rather than anticipation. You might notice you make decisions faster, or that you second-guess less, or that you're less emotionally drained at the end of the day. This isn't because you've become colder, it's because you've stopped carrying conversations that never needed to happen. Of course, this doesn't mean never explaining yourself. Explanation still has a place in intimacy, collaboration, trust. The difference is that it becomes a choice, not a reflex. You explain when you want connection, not when you want permission. So, which of these feels closest to you? The recovering over-explainer learning to sit with silence? The calibrator refining their boundaries? The emotionally tired observer conserving energy? Or the self-contained thinker protecting something wordless and real? Maybe it's not just one. Maybe it changes depending on who you're with. Take a moment and notice how this lands. Think about the last time you didn't explain or wished you hadn't. What shifted in the room? What shifted in you? If this topic resonated, you're not alone. Many people reach this phase quietly, without language for it, wondering if something is wrong with them. Often, it's the opposite. It's not withdrawal, it's integration. And sometimes, the most psychologically significant thing you can do is stop talking and let your choice stand. And there's one more layer worth noticing. The moment after you stop explaining, when the silence lingers just a second longer than usual, that pause is doing psychological work. In most social interactions, explanation fills space. It smooths uncertainty. It reassures everyone that the social contract is intact. When you remove it, people are briefly forced to sit with ambiguity, and how they respond to that ambiguity tells you a lot. Some people rush to fill it for you. They explain your choice back to you. Oh, you're probably just tired. You must be busy lately. Others test the boundary. They ask again, differently, softer, sharper, more personal, and some simply accept it. That reaction isn't random. It reflects how comfortable someone is with autonomy, yours and their own. People who struggle with control or certainty often experience unexplained decisions as destabilizing. People who trust themselves tend to extend that trust outward. When you stop explaining, you quietly shift the emotional labor back to where it belongs. You're no longer managing other people's discomfort preemptively. You're allowing it to exist, and that's a radical thing in a culture that rewards constant justification. This is also why stopping explanation can feel lonely at first. You might notice fewer follow-up questions, less chatter, less emotional hand-holding. The version of you that was constantly translating yourself acted like a bridge. When you step back, the distance becomes visible. But here's the paradox. The connections that remain often feel cleaner, more grounded, less exhausting. You're no longer bonding through defense, you're bonding through presence. And internally, something important recalibrates. Your sense of self becomes less performative. You stop seeing your life as something that needs to make sense out loud to be valid. Decisions don't need to sound good. They just need to feel right. This is especially noticeable in small, everyday moments. You order what you want without apologizing. You decline invitations without rehearsing. You change your mind without a backstory. Each moment is tiny, but together they build psychological weight. You begin to experience yourself as someone who acts, not someone who explains acting. That shift often coincides with maturity, but not always age. Sometimes it follows burnout, sometimes clarity, sometimes loss. Something teaches you that your inner life doesn't need constant external validation to exist, and this doesn't make you closed off. In fact, many people find they become more open, selectively, because when explanation is no longer compulsory, it becomes meaningful again. When you choose to explain, it's because you want to be understood, not because you're afraid of being misunderstood. That difference changes the tone of your voice, the pacing of your words, the energy in the room. So if you've noticed yourself explaining lately, resisting the urge to justify, pausing before filling silence, it might not be withdrawal or detachment. It might be self-trust settling in, quietly, without announcement, without explanation. And maybe that's the point. So sit with the question for a moment. Where in your life are you still explaining out of habit, not necessity? And what would happen if, just once, you didn't? If this reflection sparked something for you, you're exactly the kind of mind this channel is for. You can stay here, explore more of these quiet psychological shifts, or share your thoughts below, only if you want to explain them. And if not, that's okay too.